Hello everyone, back to today's video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. In today's video, this will take us to around the middle of March. So we're going into middle of the month with this update. So we've come out of the deep freeze. We've lost the Scandinavian high, the beast from the east, that gave us all of the freezing cold weather last week. Now, it is less cold, it's milder, but I'm not sure we can say it's going to be particularly mild over the coming few days. Actually, we've probably come out a little bit cooler than average, but nowhere near as cold as we had it last week. And there's no sign of a return to that kind of extreme freezing cold weather either. However, by the middle of the month, we may have seen a few hints of cold air trying to come back from the north. But I think the main issue for the next sort of week to 10 days is going to be chance of some very wet weather. It does look really unsettled, especially so at the end of the week, into the weekend, into the start of next week, and particularly focused on usually perhaps on England and Wales. Could have some very wet weather and some quite strong winds as well, all indicative of the jet stream remaining on a southerly track at the moment. So I've taught you for everything that's going on with weather in the next week, 10 days. Right now, we'll start off having a look at central temperature. So this, on the first day of the month, was showing we got an anomaly of 8 degrees below average. It is in recovery now. It's coming up, but it's still 5 degrees below average, so still really cold, with a CET provisional to yesterday, the 4th, of minus 0.5 degrees, so still negative, but it won't be for much longer, and I think by the time we get through to this time next week, we'll probably be back to a much more sensible level. Probably still a bit colder than average, but I think we'll be much closer to the early March average by this time next week, but it was certainly a very impressively cold start to the month. Incidentally, we're still waiting for the final statistics to come in at the UK Met Office for the UK temperature and precipitation during February, and also for the winter. As soon as those come in, then we'll be able to evaluate winter forecasts and bring you all the information on what happened during February for the UK. It's just a matter of waiting for the UK Met to get those climate averages updated, but as soon as they are updated, I'll bring them to you. So we're going to have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from the Penn State University website for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet. It's an area in the atmosphere. High pressure, low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure, and blue to low pressure. So you can see what's going on here for the 7 to 10 day time frame. This does take us to the middle part of March. We've got a deep area of below average heights over and to the west and southwest of the UK. The black lines here are indicative of the jet stream, and the jet stream is still on a southerly track. It's to our south. So typically that would be quite a cold sort of situation, but because of the exact alignment of this trough, we're actually bringing up less cold air from the southwest and bringing it in from the west. Nevertheless, it does look a really unsettled pattern. That's a very deep trough that we've got over and to the west of the country. And still a little bit of blocking left over from all of the cold weather. So we've got above average heights close to Greenland, another area of above average heights to the north of Scandinavia. It's a lot weaker than it was, but all of that orange up there, that really is indicative of the blocking that we had last week. And it still continues to some degree, and it still is having an influence on the weather, because that's the primary reason the jet stream is on a southerly track. So despite that we come out of the freezer, this blocking is still having an influence on the weather going up to the middle of the month. This is the GFS, and it's very similar, really unsettled again. So we've got this deep area of blue here over UK and to the west and northwest of us. The jet stream on a bit of a southerly track as well, doing something like that. So it just looks really unsettled, this. Bit of an onslaught, actually, from the Atlantic. We expect several bouts of wet and windy weather. And again, with the jet stream to our south, a lot of that wet and windy weather will be focused on England and Wales. Again, a little bit of a blocking signal there around Greenland. So again, that's just left over from all of the blocking that we had last week. Right, have a look at GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Cardiff in Wales today. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Cardiff. So last week we was down there around -15 at 850 HPA. Now we're up here. We're very close to the 30-year temperature average. You see, but through much of this coming week, we're actually going to be a little bit cooler than average with the upper air temperature. So as I say, although temperatures are recovering, we're not talking about anything to get particularly excited about. Now, over the weekend into sort of next week, looks like for a while anyway, it does turn a little bit milder. But then through the course of next week, we may be seeing signs that we're trying to go a bit colder again as we head into the middle part of March. Overall, not doing anything particularly exciting with the temperatures. I think it's really the rainfall, certainly for the next week or so, that's the main story. You'll see just loads and loads of precipitation spikes here, and particularly so from like the end of the week and into the weekend and the start of next week. And that's that period just there when it does look very, very wet for much of England and Wales indeed. This is how the surface temperatures are looking at Cardiff. So that's 10 degrees just there. That's freezing. That's -10 down there. And that's +20 degrees up there. Now, you can get to +20 degrees in March. You can get to a little bit higher than that, actually, up to 21, 70 Fahrenheit occasionally. But there's no sign that we're going up to that sort of level of warmth, certainly for the first half of March. Anyway, we'll wait and see what the second half of March has to say. But for the first half, it looks like we're keeping temperatures generally around or under 10 degrees Celsius at Cardiff, which is a little bit colder than average. Normally by early March, you'd be expecting to get to 10 degrees really in South Wales and southwestern parts of England. So a bit cooler than average. Nothing overly dramatic happening. And some cold nights still being signalled there as well, especially as we get through into next week perhaps. So have a look at the temperature anomaly. That's how the temperature anomalies are looking for the next week. So again, this is taking us from the 5th through to the 13th of March. And we see we're coming a little bit cooler than average still. So despite that, we've got a recovery in temperature taking place. It's nothing to get all that excited about. And overall, the anomaly is a bit on the colder than average side for the UK and for Ireland in the week ahead. Precipitation anomalies are looking like that. Near normal for the north, but you'll notice that for England and Wales, it is looking wet. So again, this tells us that the jet stream is on a southerly track. Notice how wet it's looking across Spain and Portugal in the week ahead. We've got this area of wet weather close to the Bay of Biscay as well. So all of this is telling us that the jet stream is being pushed southwards, and so that's taking the jet into Bay of Biscay, Spain, Portugal, and also affecting southern parts of the UK as well. So the wettest precipitation anomalies are to the south is nearer normal up in the north. This is how the GFS midnight run was looking. This is for Friday. We end the week on an unsettled note with low pressure close to western Scotland. These areas of low pressure down here to our southwest, they need keeping an eye on because they could develop into quite potent areas of low pressure as we go into next weekend. So this is how things look on Saturday, where we bring in a weather system through the south. It's kind of like a trailing weather front here, weather is in that sort of zone. So it's bringing a first pulse of really quite wet weather to England and Wales on Saturday. Further north it's showery, and then on Sunday that next low pressure starts to head up towards us. That's deepening a lot, so that's bringing gale force winds through the Bay of Biscay, possibly affecting some southern and southwestern parts of the country. There will also be a lot of heavy rain associated with that low pressure as well. We go through to Monday and just look very unsettled. This is a week away, but low pressure just exiting into the North Sea then, and looks really unsettled. A bout of heavy rain and strong winds pushed across the country from Sunday to Monday. Some quite cold air starting to get pulled down into the north on the backside of that low pressure as well. Unsettled weather then continues through into next week. This is Tuesday, 13th of March, when again we've got another one of those trailing weather fronts. The front is doing something rather like that, backing all the way out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And as you get those ripples running along the trailing weather front, so you can develop pulses of heavy rain and potentially, if they whip themselves up, some quite strong winds as well. Moving up towards day 10, it's remaining unsettled and starting to try and go a bit colder as well. So this is day 10. This is Thursday, 15th of March, when wind is turning into the north, across the northern part of the country. And we've got this deep area of low pressure to our south, again, centred around the Bay of Biscay. That's trying to bring wet weather up from the south. So there's a bit of a battle going on there by day 10. There's a front in that sort of position. And, well, for the south, it would still be very wet. For the north, it's turning colder. And in between, wherever the battle lines set up, not inconceivable that you could get some snow in that kind of situation going into the middle of March. Just beyond the middle of March, just beyond day 10, actually, we turn the wind properly into the north. So colder air is coming back there. From the north. Nowhere as cold as it was with Beast from the east, I have to keep re-emphasising that, but certainly another cold snap, anyway, is developing there just beyond day 10 and the middle of the month. That was the midnight run of the GFS. It's 6 o'clock run for the end of the week, looking very similar. Unsettled low pressure is threatening to the south. That develops into quite a major system over the weekend, bringing more heavy rain and gales, particularly to England and Wales, and probably Ireland as well, on Sunday. On Monday, still looking really unsettled. Low pressure is close to the country, bringing bouts of rain, probably quite strong winds as well. That's how we look on day 10. So not pulling as much cold air down from the north by day 10. We don't have that deep area of low pressure to our south either, around Biscay. But nevertheless, the overall pattern is still unsettled. And it's turning a bit cooler as well, with the wind swinging into the northwest. And then this is the ECMWF, and again we're starting on Friday, looking unsettled with showery bursts of rain in the north. Low pressure is down to our southwest, threatening to bring potentially a very unsettled weekend. This is Sunday, and it does look pretty stormy actually to the southwest. Gale force winds close to Biscay. That could be threatening gales across Ireland and southwest England. Heavy rain will be pushing up across the country as well, particularly focused on England and Wales. That's how things are looking in a week's time, with low pressure over the top of the country. And then we go into the extended period with the east. We take that low pressure to the east, bring some cooler air down from the northwest early next week. And then that's how we finish up on day 10, which is Thursday, 15th of March. Still looking very unsettled. Notice that it's trying to raise pressure again over Scandinavia. Haven't got a Scandinavian high, but it's trying to raise the heights up over Scandinavia. And where that would go beyond that, I think it's in the realm of speculation. But sometimes when you've had a Scandinavian high, when you have blocking, it can become a recurring pattern. So it's not inconceivable we might get another Scandinavian high and easterly wind. I mean, as you go further on through the spring, the risk of Scandinavian highs and easterly winds will always increase anyway. So by the time you get to May, it's almost certain at some point during May we will get a Scandinavian high and we'll get quite a prolonged bout of easterly winds. But of course by then there's no cold air over Russia, so they're harmless. They generally produce in May pretty sort of grey, grotty days, especially in the east, but nothing to be concerned about. But at this time of year, if we get a Scandinavian high in March, we know from 2013, but it can, even right at the end of March, it can sometimes with an easterly get really quite cold. So it's all speculation. We just have to wait and see whether that's picking up on anything. The GFS doesn't really show it. But I suppose you would say that generally heights are reasonably high generally to our north and northeast here by day 10 with the ECMWF. If these low pressures that we have here get pushed down there, then it's not totally impossible we might turn wind back into the east, but it is inconclusive. I think the main story both for the next week to 10 days is rain. We're going to be in for a lot of wet weather. This is the 10-day accumulated precipitation forecast from the Weather Outlook based on the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, and it's looking wet across all parts of the country in the next 10 days, particularly so in the southwest. So parts of Wales, southwest England, also some central southern parts of England, getting between around 60 and 80 millimetres of rain in the next 10 days. Bear in mind, we've got a lot of snow melt, particularly across southwestern parts of Wales and into southwest England. Still deep snow drifts melting away. So with the melting snow and with all that wet weather, I suspect there's an increasing risk of flooding here for some parts of the country through this first half of May. And even over in the east, where it's typically driest for the 10-day precipitation accumulation, we're still talking about, for instance, over in the East Midlands, around 50 millimetres, 2 inches of rain in the next 2 weeks. So it is looking like quite a notable spell of wet weather. Not quite so much for parts of North East England and Western Scotland, but most places in for quite a wet old time of it looks like, for the first half of March. And then around middle of the month, do we get that cold snap? Do we perhaps start to raise heights again over Scandinavia, try to get wind back into the easterly, into an easterly? I think that is very much to be determined, and obviously we'll be keeping a close watch on it. But the main story for the next few days, for the foreseeable future, if you like, is more rain rather than cold. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.